welcome back to the Meeple Podcast, episode 13.
Lucky number.
Yes, I'm Bill Price.
And I'm Hollis Biggs.
And we are the podcast for board game beginners. And we are here today. Episode 13 is Party Game Madness. So we have two big party games, specifically for, one of them's 3 to 8 players. I think the other one's pretty close to that. Why don't you get started?
Sure.
What do you want to talk about first?
I would like to talk about Wavelength first, because it has been all over my TikTok For You page.
Yes, Wavelength is a party game. It's available. I know you can get it Amazon. I know Target, Walmart. They all carry it. It's mass market party game. And it is a team-based game where you have 2 competing teams. And it has this really neat, you're going to have to go to our Instagram to kind of get the full effect of this. But it's kind of this wheel that you turn, and it's got kind of a segment that moves around that gives different points. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your team, one person on each team is trying to get the rest of their team to guess the right spot in a range of extremes. Like, for example, one card might be guilty pleasures, and the other side might be actually just bad. So on one side of the wheel, all the way to one extreme is what a guilty pleasure. The other side of the extreme would be actually just bad. You might have good or evil, bad habit, good habit.
Untalented, talented.
Yes. So there's always extremes, it's basically opposites. And you're going to have a section on this wheel that you are going to try to get your team to place the dial within these parameters on how extreme it is. So maybe if it's in the middle of guilty pleasure or actually just bad, maybe you're, say, ice cream. Because, yeah, ice cream's a guilty pleasure, but, like, it's not bad. It's not good for you. So obviously you could kind of make an argument for either. So it's maybe you're like, okay, well, they're probably trying to tell us that this is somewhere in the middle. It's one, but it's also the other.
And I will say, this is also, your clue is heavily dependent on who is giving the clue.
Oh, for
sure.
So,
for example, like, someone's lactose intolerant and they say, well, ice cream. Well, then yes. I'm going to know that for them, it's actually just bad. So that, if you have some knowledge of who the people that you're playing with, this game could be a little bit easier. Sometimes it's a little bit tougher.
But that's kind of what makes it so fun, is because, like, you just kind of, everyone sort of has to make up their own mind. And I think it almost, for me, had less to do with the person presenting, as the person presenting kind of had to read their audience and know, like, for you guys, what would this be? And it's just, it's silly, it's fun, and it's quick.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty quick.
I think the other cool thing is that your team is not the only team guessing here. Your team has to move this dial to where they think the middle of this kind of spectrum is. But the other team has to guess, okay, well, do you think the middle of the spectrum is to the left or to the right of where they've selected? And again, a lot of it's based on the clue giver and how they interpreted the card. So that part can be kind of tough. That was something that I think your team was a little better at than my team. My team was excellent. We won.
Your team's great. Yeah. You won once.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Well, once was enough for me.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's all that mattered. So
what's funny is my team was actually, we were cheating. I didn't really realize it, but
your team was you and both your brothers.
Yes, me and both my brothers. And they were kind of cheating. And so what we started doing is whoever gave the clue was banished to the kitchen until the guess was made, so they couldn't influence anything. You can't answer any questions or anything like that. And actually, after we stopped cheating is when we won. the game. The whole one we were cheating on, we lost dramatically. So I think the old adage "cheaters never win" is
definitely applies.
Apropos here. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I just think this is a lot of fun. It is 100% what I would call a party game. This
absolutely
defines a party game. It's just a bunch of people on one side, a bunch of people on the other side, and they're competing with each other. And it's a silly way to do it, and it leads to a lot of fun, like, laugh out loud moments where you hear people justifying these things. And you're like, there's no way.
Oh, they're so funny. And there's also, I think we played with all the cards mixed in together, but there's advanced cards versus the regular cards, I suppose. So, for example, I remember playing this card in particular, and it looks like it is an advanced card. But one side to the left side is vapes, and to the right is doesn't vape. So trying to come up with a person, a thing, like to come, to fit that clue was very challenging. But I think my team did pretty well on that one.
I think so.
They're just some of them are really funny. The advanced ones in particular are kind of, I don't want to say thought-provoking because that's maybe not the right word, but they're just, some of them are funny. And they are double-sided, so there's almost endless possibilities.
Yeah, there are a ton of these
game.
There are a ton of these cards too. And since it's kind of random, it is random as to where this little spectrum spot that you're trying to get people to move the dial to, it can really change up. You can even reuse the same card multiple times, and if the spectrum spot is in a different place each time, then your clues are going to be radically different. So you're never going to get to the point where like, oh, I'm just going to give the same clue, because it's never going to be in the same spot. Odds are you're not going to be repeating any cards unless you play this nonstop for every night for years. Then yeah, you're probably should probably get out of the house, maybe play a different game, but I think even then there's still a lot of replayability here. So
definitely, the cards were all fun. Is this a game that has expansion packs as well?
This game has an expansion that's coming out. I think they have expansion packs available on an app, like on a phone app that provides like additional cards and random stuff. So, and all that information is in the game. So it is very well supported, and it's a very, very popular game. And we really liked it. I liked it a lot. What would you rate it?
I would rate it pretty high for being fun. I would not call this the most portable game, but I think if you're hosting like a game night, this is the perfect game to bring to it. If there's going to be, I also think, okay, I'm going to make another caveat here. I think this game is most fun played with 4 people, like more than 4 people.
Oh, for sure. I
think
more
we
people,
played with
the better.
6. I think it would have been fun with 8, 10. I mean,
I agree.
I'm sure there's probably a player count, like a limit, but I think you could play this with 10 people on each side and it would still be a lot of fun.
Oh, sure. You could absolutely play this with as many people as you want on each side. The only problem then being trying to get everyone to agree. So it could be a little frustrating, I think, once you probably get past 5 on a team.
Potentially.
So, but yeah, theoretically, I mean, this is one of those party games that kind of has sort of unlimited player count.
Yeah.
And even if it's not even, you can, if it's large enough, you get 5 on one team and 6 on another or something. Like, that's not going to throw anything off, really.
Oh, yeah.
At least I don't think so. What's the official
count?
Player count on this?
That is a great question.
Guessing it's 8, but I don't know. You know what? It'll be up on our website when I put this on our website at www.themaplepodcast.com. Just go to the board games list page, and you'll be able to see everything there, including our rating, which is.
I'm gonna give it. Ooh, this is so tough. I'm gonna give it an 8.
Okay.
Only points off for portability. Other than that, this is a great game.
See, and I'm not taking any points off for portability on this one because realistically, it's just the box. It's completely self-contained. So it wouldn't it would take up less room on a table than Mantis does. Or 5 Crowns. or like it's just the box. You open the box and everything sets up in the box. There's no like central player board or anything like that. So you could play this at a big table in a bar. That's not your ideal setting. I think your ideal setting obviously is somebody's house or someplace where you guys can all make a lot of noise and not upset people around you. But I think as far as party games go, I would probably also give this an 8. I have recently discovered that I like party games more and more. I didn't used to consider a lot of party games like quote unquote real games, because
what a board game snob.
Right,
that's crazy.
Like that's totally pretentious, and I've tried to get away from that, and I have been really really enjoying party games lately, and I think it's especially because now we have more people to play with, and that brings us into our next party game, which is, I do know the player count on that. It's 3 to 8. And we played it, I believe, with 6.
Yeah.
And had a lot of fun. And what is it?
The next one is Dixit. Dixit.
Dixit. Yes. And the tagline is, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Boy, is it.
Isn't it? So in this game, there is a central board where you are kind of racing from 1 point to 30 points. And 30 points wins you the game. Everybody has a hand of cards. And they're these weird, like almost AI-ish looking cards. They're not AI generated. This is a much older game than AI art is. But it's like weird stuff like an abacus with planets instead of, the balls on there. There's like...
Or what looks like a fruit-bearing tree with a bunch of Saturn planets.
Yeah, there's a dice.
In the tree, like it's a fruit tree.
A die with tentacles coming out of it. There's like bleeding walls and all kinds of neat stuff, right? So they're very, I'll call them abstract. I think this abstract is probably...
Some of the ones you've described sound scary. They're not scary.
They're not scary. These are
beautifully drawn cards.
Very beautifully drawn, and somewhat silly. A lot of them in their own right.
Yes.
So what you do is every round, one player is the storyteller, and the storyteller picks a card from their hand and doesn't show it to everyone else, and they say a word that they associate with this card somehow.
Can't this one be like a word, a phrase, a quote?
It can be a word, a phrase, a quote, a song. It can be hummed. It can be like, you can pretty much do sort of whatever you want with it. Yes, that is correct. Which is very much unlike a lot of these codenamey type games.
I think Wavelength had a description like it's 5 words or less.
Yeah,
is what you can say.
And so what everybody does, they have these dials in front of them where they before I do that, everybody looks at their hand and they try and associate one of the cards from their hand with that word. And so everybody takes the card out of their hand, they put every face down, everybody puts them all in a pile, the storyteller puts his card in there with them, shuffles everything up, and then puts them around the board, numbered 1 through however many players there are. And every player has a dial that goes like 1 through 8. And so based on which card they think was the storyteller's card, they put it on their dial, everyone puts their dial face down, and then everyone reveals at one time. Now the catch is that the storyteller gets points if at least one person guesses their card. They get no points if everyone guesses their card, or if nobody guesses their card. So they want some people to guess it, but they don't want everyone to. So they can't do the most obvious thing like rabbit in a forest, and then like everyone guesses the rabbit in the forest and they don't get any points. But if they were like
Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, or fairy tale or something like that.
Yeah. You have a couple of options that like could work for that card,
right,
but potentially might work with a handful of other cards.
With other people's cards, because you're counting on, if it's obscure enough, you're counting on other people to have cards in their hand that might kind of go along with those. That's why these cards are so abstract, because you can have, there are multiple cards in here that you could give a word and you'd be like, oh, well, that word describes this card and this card and this card and this card. And so you're trying to kind of influence just enough people. And additionally, as a player, if people guess your card instead of the storyteller's, you get points for that too. Mm-hmm. So you want people to try and guess your card based on what the storyteller is saying. So it's really fun. It's not nearly as complicated as it sounds. It's hard. It's a little harder without the visuals to really put it across, but it's very quick to learn. It's very easy. And I think very, very replayable. There are also a ton of expansions that provide a ton of extra cards that can just be mixed in. There's a Disney Dixit. There's all kinds of fun expansions and additional stuff you can add to this. So there's going to be virtually unlimited replayability here. Yeah. What did you think of it?
I thought this one was really good. In terms of party games, one thing that I kind of liked about Wavelength was it's very collaborative between you and your team. With Dixit, there are no teams. So you are kind of racing against your opponents, I suppose, but you kind of need them collaboratively to award you points through you putting down your best guess or your best card for each story or clue.
Yes.
So I think, like, from a collaboration aspect and, like, a true party, what I consider a party game, I would say Wavelength is a little bit closer. But Dixit, not to, like, discount Dixit was great. I just felt it was a little less collaborative, so I spent a lot of time, like, kind of just looking at my opponents, being like, did you play this card? Who put this down? Are you gonna, are you gonna impact my game if you, like, vote for not my card or vote for a different card? So it's kind of neat. I like it a lot. This one I think we played a little bit more quietly compared to the last game that we've talked about in this podcast episode. So that is not even a critique. That's just kind of my experience on it.
They're two very different games.
They are.
For sure.
Yeah. But in terms of party game, I would say this is still a really good one. And it doesn't take up a ton of room to play. You've got one central board, I think, like you said, and the cards sit around the board. And then you have some in your hand as well.
Yeah, I think this one would be a decent game to play with, I say kids, not necessarily young kids, but I think...
I think they say 8+.
Yeah, I was going to say 8, 9, 10 years old would really enjoy this. Adults also, I mean, we played with all adults and absolutely loved it. But this, I'd almost consider this to be almost more of a board gamer's party game as opposed to Wavelength, which is just sort of a family party game. It's the kind, like, I don't think you could get a bunch of people doing shots and, down in six packs playing Dixit, but I think they'd absolutely play Wavelength.
100%. That's a great way to describe it.
Maybe not well, but they would play it and they'd have a great time. Or at least they would think they would. It would be...
The important thing is that they felt they had a good time, not whether they won or lost.
Yes. So if you're into kind of the traditional, like, let's pair up and have teams and almost charades-esque kind of party game, Wavelength is probably your jam here. If you are really into exploring more the board game side, but want something that plays up to 8 people, I think Dixit is your jam.
Dixit is a fantastic choice for that.
It really is. So I think it really depends on kind of what kind of experience you're looking for. I'm going to give this one an 8 as well, same as I gave Wavelength, because, but for very different reasons. I think it is a very different experience. I'm not sure you can always play one with the ideal crowd for the other. I think in our case, we have all played a lot of games, and so something like a Dixit wouldn't be any more or less challenging than like a Ticket to Ride or something like that. But we've also all played, charades and, telestrations or whatever, so we know the kind of game that Wavelength is.
Sure.
So, what about you? What'd you give it?
I really liked it. I am actually going to give it a 7.5.
Okay.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Would definitely play it again, but
it's actually a little higher than I thought you were going to give it.
No, I thought it was a good time. I also did not win this game.
That's correct.
You
did not.
Not that that's majorly factoring into my rating today, but this one also does take what I felt like I think the box says it takes about 30 minutes. I would say that's like pretty accurate, maybe leaning on a little
closer
higher.
To 45, yeah.
And again, of the two party games we've talked about today, if I'm comparing them to each other, I felt like Wavelength was faster moving, even though it probably took about the same amount of time.
If not longer.
Because, like, I personally know I took like 5 minutes to come up with an option for, to come up with a clue for one of my cards. So,
right.
Like, Wavelength might have actually taken more time, but I felt like Dixit was a longer game.
Well, I feel like Dixit takes a lot more headspace to kind of... You have to do a lot more abstract thinking, I feel like. With Wavelength, yeah, you're justifying, hey, is this good or evil? But at the same time, like, ultimately speaking, you're just kind of guessing. And you're arguing with each other, and it's
True.
In a fun way. But with Dixit, you're really kind of trying to be like... I mean, you're examining those cards, and you're like, oh,
and you need your card... Yeah, you need your card to be good, but not too good.
Too good, yeah.
And that's
you need
hard.
your clue to be good, but not too good. And so it is, it is definitely, I feel like it's a thinkier game.
But it also, it appears, won
the Spiel des Jahres.
In 2010.
2010, yep.
So it's kind of a big deal.
That's a huge deal. That's the German Game of the Year, which is oftentimes just, like, great.
It was definitely a good one. I think we'll definitely play it again. Maybe with some, I think you said there's some expansions out there for it as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this one would be a great party game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that was Dixit and Wavelength. If you have any party game suggestions, or even non-party game suggestions that you want us to review, things you really got into, or something you're even curious about, then just send us you can send us an email at themeeplepodcast@gmail.com. You can leave us like a comment on any of our posts on Instagram at the Meeple Podcast. Facebook, we have a pretty active Facebook community, and check out our website at www.themeeplepodcast.com.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you all think of our ratings. I'm sure mine are, again, pretty heavily influenced on whether or not I win. So maybe your all's ratings are different. We'd love to hear them.
Absolutely. All right. We will see you next time.